Welcome to part 9 on Enlightenment in a Revolutionary World. Now we're going to take a look at the rise of Napoleon. In 1795, the anti-French coalition or alliance collapsed, right? Prussia, the Netherlands, and Spain and Savoy all signed peace treaties with France, leaving only Britain and Austria at war with France by 1795, right? Also in that year, France annexed Austrian Netherlands, right? And in 1796 and 1797, their armies began to push into Italy, right? But by 1799, most Frenchmen had gotten sick and tired of revolutionary war, high taxes, high prices, new constitutions, new directors. And many Frenchmen began to long for, nostalgically, the good old days of rule by a strong absolute king, right? This is going to create a perfect situation for Napoleon. Napoleon was born in 1769. He was a minor Corsican noble. He early on had tied his star to the revolution. He became a rising officer in the officer corps because it was purged of the aristocrats. And so by the age of 24, he's a general. And he'd won a series of victories in the revolution. Right? For example, he took the royalist French city of Toulon in 1793. He suppressed riots against the Directory itself in 1795. And afterwards, he began his campaign in Italy, where he established a pro-French puppet republic in the northern Italian territories, and also gained land along the Rhine River from the Austrians. Right? Austria is going to leave the war after this, and now Britain is standing alone. Okay, all of this brought Napoleon to the attention of the head of the Directory, a guy by the name of Paul Francois, who was the Vicomte de Barras, right? I know, it's like, wait a minute, I thought we got rid of titles. There's a lot of gray areas here, right? Barras wanted to exploit Napoleon's popularity, right, in order to enhance his own. It's a great plan, but it turns out this young general proved to be a little bit too successful. He invaded Egypt in 1798 and won a spectacular victory, right? When he returned from Egypt on November 9th of 1799, he led his troops against the Directory itself and forced them to dissolve. All right, Barras is pushed out of power. And he instead establishes a rule in France by 3 councils in which Napoleon is at the head. Now, this will be done through plebiscite, right, which is a vote. And millions of people are going to boycott the plebiscite. But the French government, or Napoleon more specifically, will just fake the results, right? Napoleon concluded that France was needed to have a restoration of a strong central government in order to be able to face its external enemies. However, before he could turn to this domestic reform, he did have to take the heat off of France from these enemies. Right about the same time that Napoleon was establishing this 3 councils and eliminating the Directory, in 1799, a new anti-France alliance had formed between Britain and Austria, and also Russia and the Ottoman Empire, right? So initially, he is going to have to fight a series, again, of battles against these European powers in order to establish the peace he needs to institute his domestic policies. He's going to complete a series of successful military campaigns, climaxing with the defeat of the Austrians at a place called Marengo, right? Napoleon then forces all the parties involved to the peace table. The result is in 1801, they will sign the Treaty of Amiens, right? Now, this treaty, and everybody kind of knew this treaty is really just a truce, right? It gives a little bit of about a 2-year break in the war, but it's what Napoleon needed in order to get his domestic reforms put in, right? Now, when we look at his domestic reforms, on the surface, they appear to be very liberal, very egalitarian, and even revolutionary, but they really owe themselves more to Louis XIV, the absolute monarch, than they do to Voltaire or Rousseau or even Robespierre, right? Napoleon is going to begin by drawing up a whole new series of law codes, right, resulting in what is called the Code Napoleon, right, the Napoleon Code, right? These codes will be drawn up between 1804 and 1811. Now, here are some of the reforms. Napoleon guaranteed free public education for all, but that education included indoctrination in strict patriotism and loyalty to Napoleon, right? Napoleon established a national bank. He reformed the French government finances on the English model, and he stabilized the currency, and he imposed taxes equally on everybody. In 1801, Napoleon and the Pope actually signed a concordant that recognized the Roman Catholic Church as the official religion of France, but also preserved religious toleration. Confiscations of church lands were to cease, but previously confiscated lands still remained in possession of the government, right? Napoleon was the person who would appoint all bishops, right? The administration in France was kept strictly in Napoleon's hands. He really ran everything with an iron fist. The legislature really was just a rubber stamp. You still had the press, but it was heavily censored. Local administrators, those 83 departments, kept Napoleon informed on everything going on in the districts. And he even had a secret police created to monitor opposition and disposed of any dissenters that might threaten his power. So while these reforms are revolutionary, they also serve to enhance Napoleon's power. Matter of fact, through the implementation of these Napoleon codes and these other reforms, Napoleon is effectively establishing the 5 rules of absolutism, like we discussed with Louis XIV. I mean, he dominates the administration of government. He dominates the wealth of France. He dominates religion, right? He is the undisputed commander of the army. The only last little piece that he needs to get in all of this is that the king must be in control, right? And his position is not necessarily permanent, but he's going to take care of that. In 1802, Napoleon is going to have himself proclaimed First Consul of France for life, makes his position a permanent, lifelong position. And then finally, in 1804, he's going to assume the title of Emperor. Right? Matter of fact, he's even going to go insofar as that he will crown himself. Now, we have an emperor, so now all we need is an empire.